Hello, everyone. We're gonna just let a few people join in, take another minute or so. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Joshua Zinder. I'm here today with my co-chair for the AIA New Jersey Design Awards, Seth Lieb. Whether you're aiming for local section awards, state design awards, tri-state, or AIA National Awards, the lesson is the same. A great project isn't enough. You need a clear narrative and a real understanding of what juries are looking for. Today, we'll cover what makes a submission successful, common mistakes to avoid, how to communicate design intent and impact, and how the AIA Framework for Design Excellence can strengthen your entries. Today, we are joined by three esteemed architects: Jeff Goldstein, FAIA, founding principal of DIGSAU, a Philadelphia-based architecture firm celebrated for its culturally resonant and resourceful design approach. Under Jeff's leadership, DIGSAU has built an extraordinary reputation for creating work that is bold, meaningful, deeply connected to its context. The firm's impact has been recognized with honors including AIA Philadelphia Emerging Architecture Prize designation as one of North America's emerging voices by Architectural League of New York, and the AIA Pennsylvania Firm Award, marking a decade of distinguished practice. Their work has received design honor awards from AIA Philadelphia, AIA Pennsylvania, AIA Tri-States, and AIA National. Their work has appeared in Architectural Record, Architects Newspaper, Dwell, CNN, the New York Times, and more. Bart Shaw, FAIA, is co-founder and principal of Ibanez Shaw Architecture, a Fort Worth-based practice recognized for architecture of conceptual clarity, material expression, and craft. His work has received more than 50 design awards, including National AIA Small Project Awards, the American Architecture Award, IIDA Design Awards, regional and local AIA Awards, and recognition from American for the Arts. He was elevated to the AIA College of Fellows of the American Institute of Architects for Design in 2019. Bart is a lecturer, adjunct professor, frequent design juror. He served as the chair for the 2026 AIA Small Project Awards and has served on numerous regional chapter design award juries, including the 2024 AIA New Jersey Design Awards. He is currently serving on the executive board of the AIA Small Firm Exchange and as a member of the Texas Society of Architects O'Neill Ford Medal Committee. Lisa Ferretto, AIA, is a senior director of climate action and design excellence at the AIA National, supporting architects across the nation to improve the built environment for climate action and justice. She has more than 25 years of experience in architecture and sustainability, and before joining AIA in 2022, was a sustainability director and architect at a large firm. There, she consulted on projects across market sectors, promoting the integration of sustainability throughout the design process, and grew the firm's portfolio from one lead building to 9 million square feet of certified space. She has served on Baltimore City's Sustainability Commission and Maryland's Green Building Council. Lisa was recognized as one of the top 10 women leading the fight against climate change by WOW, Women of the World, and in the Say It Loud exhibition by AIA Baltimore and NOMA, recognizing contributions of women designers in Maryland. So I will drop the due dates for all of the design awards in the chats for reference, or Christina will actually. Please put any questions you may have in the Q&A, and Seth will cover that with our panel at the end of the presentation portion. And let's start with a quick Mentimeter. So as soon as this comes up, if you scan the QR code, uh, you can you access that. Christina, will you put the link in the chat if they want to do it not on their phone? And first, just some general information. We're trying to get to know you and who you are. Um, on a marketing staff. Okay, here they come in. Okay, so we have a really good mix of people here. Okay, let's go on to the next. How many employees are in the firm? Okay, so it's mostly small and smallish firms. Okay. So most are occasional or regular submitters. Okay, and then we want to know, have you submitted to design competitions? And you can submit multiples, you don't just submit one, so mostly state and local, a couple national, and a fair amount have not submitted. That's interesting. Okay, if we keep going. What's the most difficult part of submitting for, and you can choose three for this. Um, so it's a lot of people are looking for understanding what juries are looking for. And I think that with Jeff and Bart, that will really be information will be really very helpful today. Okay. Continuing on. Jeff, take it away.
Thanks, Josh. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. I am here in Philadelphia, right across the Delaware from New Jersey. I grew up in New Jersey, in South Jersey, and still spend a lot of time there. My parents are still in my childhood home, and I visit as often as I can, both to see them and to enjoy the beach in the summer, especially. So, thanks for having me. Um, I am going to lead off, but you're going to hear a common theme across what I have to say and then what Bart has to say. And both of us are going to be referring to what Lisa is going to be providing a lot more information on. So a little bit of what I'm doing is teeing up. Um, you know, for us, it all starts with why. Like, why are we doing this? And I think in order to be successful, you have to really be committed and have a strong reason to spend the time and energy that we're going to share with you that we at least put in to positioning our projects for awards. We do this because it's part of our company ethos. We really believe architecture matters for people. Design excellence is a core value, and we find awards as a way to both kind of offer us demonstration that we're doing what we say we're doing. It's an opportunity to celebrate with our clients who tend to enjoy the recognition. And it's a great morale boost for the team of architects and collaborators, we try to make it a real opportunity to celebrate and recognize the hard work that we're all doing. Okay, so next slide. So we know why we're doing this. We do a lot of work, and not all of them get recognized with awards, and not all of them do we even spend the time to submit for awards. This is really the criteria that we look at when we're evaluating whether it's worth investing the time and energy that it takes to set up a project for an award. At its baseline, there has to be a really strong project. It has to be a really compelling response to a problem, whether it's a building or a site design or an interior. Um, it has to be really strong. It has to hold up at various scales, and I'll talk about that. We have to be responsive. Each award that we pursue has different criteria. Or is asking about different things. Even there are slight differences between Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, and potentially between Pennsylvania and tri-state. So we are constantly tuning to make sure that what we're submitting responds to the criteria and requirements of the award. And some projects lend themselves better for certain awards or categories, depending on what's required. An award submission relies on quality documentation, high level, high quality photography, and an investment in drawings and diagrams that is typically beyond what's required in the course of a natural design process. So we spend a lot of time, and I'll show examples of this, taking drawings and diagrams that may have been done as part of the design process and then tweaking them to be clear for the purpose of an award. And all of this, most importantly, is held together with a narrative. And that's the storytelling part of the award. It's not just a good project and good drawings of it, but we have to be able to describe the problem or the challenge, the opportunities, and the solution, and how it really achieves the goals of our client. So I have here, this is one example of a case study of an award submission. Every one of our award submissions is different. There's no recipe, there's no formula. We'll submit two, three, four, sometimes five a year. They all look different. The organization of the slides is different. The fonts are different. Everyone is designed in a very specific way, trying to support the project that it's communicating. And so this is one submission, and I'm going to share some of the techniques that we like to use. On the left of this screen, the left kind of two-thirds of the screen is, if you can imagine, the image or the slide that's presented. And on the right in the margin is a little commentary, and that's the format that we're going to go through here. So this is page one. And I should also say that if you're really lucky, your local chapter and your state chapter are pretty similar in terms of what they require. And sometimes that happens. Recently, Pennsylvania and Philadelphia have deviated greatly, and there's a much stricter page limit for one than for the other. And we always design to if we're submitting twice or even three times, we design to the most strict requirement, and we rarely supplement. Sometimes we do, but rarely supplement. We find being concise and direct and clear is a strategy that's appreciated by jurors. And so if Philadelphia allows us to submit 10 pages and Pennsylvania allows 20, we'll design 10, and we may even submit only 10 to Pennsylvania. So this is a relatively concise, I picked this one because it's relatively concise. Okay, so our technique, we vary from slide to slide to keep jurors' interest. The first slide is one where we want to show a little bit about what's happening, but pique jurors' interest and curiosity. You have to remember, a juror is looking at 50, 80, maybe 150 submissions. And he or she, they are spending time kind of just rolling through each of those. And so we see this first slide as a way to capture um, their interest. And so this image that we chose here, and you'll see we debated the last image and this first image. The reason we picked this image, full bleed, very little information, is we thought it showed the idea of this architectural project without giving it away and potentially would help draw someone in. Okay, so the next slide. We often, not always, but we often consolidate the more word intensive requirements into one or a limited number of pages. And that's strategic, again, in order to keep the interest of a juror. Most jurors won't read this until their second or third time through. They might skim it to get a sense of what's going on. Often it's not even looked at. I can speak from experience being on juries. Often this is what's required almost at the end to validate and to substantiate things that jurors saw in the presentation or to answer questions that may have been unclear. So in this version, we put a lot of text responding and kind of giving an explanation of the issues that were that were tackled with this project. And we found that we could use the site plan to not only meet a requirement of the submission and to indicate the context of the project, but also as a way to begin to share what the solution is. So we love to get more mileage out of requirements. I'll talk about that as well. So the next slide. Now we're kind of into the body, and you can see we've organized this with respect to the framework for design excellence. Lisa will talk more about that. We use that in our office as a design process. So we're talking about these issues from day one, not necessarily with our clients. We haven't found clients are that interested in the design framework and the framework for design excellence, but we're very interested in it, and we translate it outwardly, allowing us to identify our clients' values. But internally, we use it in order to bring some consistency between projects and allows us to share ideas and compare ourselves outside of our office to our peers. Philadelphia was very early at adopting the framework for design excellence into its awards criteria. And so that we saw that coming and thought it was great and felt like most of our work would be very easy to align. So initially it took some retro kind of a retro history of the project to frame it within a design framework for design excellence. But now that's not needed because all of our projects are using the framework for design excellence. So it's really simplifying and clarifying what we did in response. So each of these slides that I'm going to lead you through is connecting to one of the elements of the framework. And remember, we're very limited in pages, so it's not a one-to-one. So we use the framework as our guide, and that's really the map that we used to navigate through the project. And we kind of prioritize those that are most important. Resources for this project was the most important thing. And you can see we even combine some imagery with some text. A slide like this knocked out a lot of the requirements. The AIA Philadelphia requires visuals of each publicly visible portion of the building. So we're able to kind of check that off, but also show a little bit of how the mystery of how this project is sitting in a tightly confined site. Okay, next slide. We start to combine, we're limited again, so we combine several of the framework issues. Here it was easy to combine energy, water, and ecosystems with a clear diagram. We used diagrams like this throughout the design process, but none of them would translate well to what the way a juror is receiving this. So this is a case where working with a young person on the staff. In the old days, I would have done this myself, but in our current setup, I'm able to work with someone, show some examples that we've done in the past, and have that individual translate the diagrams that were used throughout the design process into a more comprehensive diagram that we feel is easy for jurors to read and communicates that we were doing a lot of the things that we set out to do and explaining how the building works. Oh, and hey, by the way, it's a cool section that helps a juror understand how the building is laid out. So we're really trying to let each of these pages and drawings do multiple things. Okay, next. Um, Again, same thing. Here's a site plan where we're using it to explain how these interiors and exteriors come together and supplement it with images. We find this, and I, as a juror, often appreciate having a plan with an image of the space, and it allows me to start to navigate the building in my mind. Um, Next. Another trick that we often do is an image that shows two sides. Like, so here's an interior, and then on the other side of that glass wall, we have an image of the exterior, so you can understand the relationship between inside and out. And you can see there's no consistent format. Like, all these pages look slightly different, but they're all organized intentionally, and we're in this presentation, it's a Quaker school. It's about a bit of serenity and calm. We're balancing white space using sometimes full bleed, sometimes more composite of smaller imagery to really kind of establish a little bit of interest as you move through it. You're not seeing full bleed every single page. Okay, next. Every once in a while, you need a full bleed. You want a really good image that either captures the space or shows something interesting that's happening. Sometimes we do this for details. Sometimes it's to capture the larger space. Again, really, these kind of full bleed hero images, they're immersive and they allow people to get in. Some jurors are looking at this on their laptops, so the screen is small, at least the first time through. So we want to use as much of that real estate as possible. Okay. Again, using the requirements, we have to provide floor plans. We like to provide floor plans. We These floor plans were drawn or adapted to very specifically be in this type of presentation. And we're always looking at Arc Record and Detail Magazine and any professionally published journal or book where drawings are communicated to to get better at this, to understand how what the line weights need to be and how much contrast we need and how to properly label and diagram. So we are, especially during awards season, the table is packed with examples of professionally published drawings and diagrams. Okay, next. Again, a full bleed here. We work really hard to incorporate people in all of our images. Um, we feel this is a really good way to not only show scale of spaces, but it also helps communicate who is benefiting from the project, who the user group is. So in this case, it's a high school. So these are high school students who they're not actors. They attend the school. They volunteered to help us on the day that we were doing the photo shoot. And the more it takes a lot of effort to, sometimes logistically, sometimes with image light, rights, and it takes an extra work to get people in images. We always do it. We'll hold off on photography for a year if we have to, if we think we can get people in it. Next. We also we haven't done a lot of this in this presentation. Maybe some of you noticed a little bit of this, but captions are a great way to indicate or give a little bit of context in terms of what's in an image. And they're concise. And I can't emphasize captioning enough as a juror. I know as a juror, I really appreciate being able to look at a caption and understand all of a sudden what something is, where it is, and why it's important. Okay, and then at the second to last page, we think it's really important to demonstrate that these are architecture projects and they require technical chops to do the types of detailing that we want to do. So we, again, modify all of our technical drawings. We figure out which ones are the most important that tell the story. Again, using, examples that we see that are published that look really good, and redraw or tune the line weights in our drawings to best convey the construction. This is where we spend most of our time, is figuring out how to do all this. Okay, and then lastly, the final page, and this is one where we debated, should this be the opener or is this the outro? In the end, this is a very abstract, but we think compelling image. We love this kind of figure and ground, the relationship between old and new. And in the end, we decided let's use this as the last one because it leaves the jurors at this kind of maybe feeling a little inspired about the project. So this is again just one example. Bart's gonna, I think, talk a little bit more broadly, but also show some very specific ideas that um, are also in the service of a narrative and telling a story. So, Bart, I'll hand it off to you.
All right, fantastic. So we're a small firm in Fort Worth, Texas. We have 6 people. And you can go to the next slide. There's a slide that shows spectrum of our work. We're generalists. We do all sorts of projects, from single family to kind of mid-sized commercial projects. So this is, I'm going to share with you our approach to design awards. With Jeff, just some of this is very repetitive because we're very like-minded, but where it conflicts, go with what Jeff said because that was fantastic. I agree with everything he said. But this is what we do. This is the way we think about design awards. So one of my fellow board members in SFX asked me last year, do you approach a client and say, I think this project will win a design award, and sit down and talk about sort of how to navigate the project to win a design award? And the answer to that is no. The design awards submissions for us come out of the way that we practice architecture, and the narrative that is really key to these projects is something that's formed during the design process. So the narrative that we write for award submission may not be word for word the narrative with the client, but they're related. It's the same story. Usually, like Jeff said, we're going to go through the framework for design excellence with our clients generally. I mean, there's aspects of it that we discuss, but when we're framing this for a submission, we're taking the same narrative and trying to make it accessible for the jurors. So that's how we start our awards submissions, is to really write the narrative, to really, what is the clearest, most succinct way to describe why this project does more than just doing your job. What makes it design excellence and not just design? What's raising the bar about it? A lot of times, when we're in a small firm, and usually it's me or my partner that's putting together the award submission. And one of the difficult things is they're often so close to the project, it's hard to sometimes really step back and get a full explanation when you're doing it. So close to it, you think these things are obvious, but they're not really obvious. They're obvious. They seem obvious because you're working on the project for so long and too close to it. So it's always good, I think, if you are in a small firm, which according to Mentor, a lot of you are, to bounce the submissions and the narratives off of other people in your office and really make sure that you're getting a full description that really encompasses the full power of what's impactful about the design. And then, depending on what the criteria is for the program that you're entering, you should really think about how to incorporate the framework. For us, the narrative may be, come right out of one of the framework objects. But it may not. A lot of times the narrative of our projects is coming from how it relates particularly to the people who are involved, the community, if it's for a nonprofit, what their mission is. And the ideas of the framework relate to that narrative, but they are not straight out of the framework. So it's something to think about. But for us, that strong narrative really matters more than showing the project completely. It's about how to assemble the pieces of the submission that align with that narrative. So you show the narrative established, really treat the award submission as a design project. Jeff did a great job of describing that. Each piece really needs to be put together as these exhibits that tell a complete story about our project. I think about like an advertising pitch. You have their sort of an elevator speech along with the visuals that prove up that case that's being made. And like Jeff said, a lot of these things they need to be created. At the conference a couple weeks ago, somebody asked me, how do I put together a design presentation without this huge investment of time in creating graphics? And my answer was, I don't know that you can. I think you really have to and Jeff did a great job of describing this. You have to take these pieces of your project, the construction drawings, design ideas, and put them in a form that's easily absorbable by the juror and really communicates with them. In professional photography, one of the things I've learned over time is we work with great photographers. One in particular is fantastic. Our photographer is interested in making the most beautiful image that he can, which is great. But when we're looking at that in the context of award submission, we need to tell the story. And so often what we've learned to do is actually draft out which photographs we know we need to tell the story before the photo shoot and make sure that those are included. Because even though it may not be to the photographer's eyes the most beautiful picture, we really need that to show how people interact with the project and to show those key aspects that are part of the narrative. So one thing not to forget too is you want to show the design thinking, right? The sketches, their relationship, alignment diagrams, context analysis, really important, and design evolution. The jurors are not just looking at the end product. They're looking at the big ideas that are being developed in the project and make sure that that isn't lost and those are communicated. So there's a couple examples I'm going to show in here, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it after this. Is just sequencing of images. But this is a project submission from Max Levy, who's an architect in Dallas. And this is super simple, but I think it's a great example of just, showing design thinking, design ideas in a very simple way. So you can just flip through these pretty quickly, Josh. But he starts with the partie, and showing kind of these plant wells and the alignment of the two bars of the house. And then it kind of shows how the water is brought from the roof and deposited back into these wells. And that, there's this transparency that reads through this project and shows off, how the water's returning to the earth. And that's all apparent from the imagery from the sequencing without him having to write this. And I'm sure his narrative, says something similar, but a really beautiful exposition of design thinking without having to have the words. I think, as Jeff said, that, a lot of the, adding a lot of text to the images, like for me, aesthetically, I have an adverse reaction to it. I think a lot of jurors will not read it. Some of them will. But I think the real key aspect for me is you want to get past the first cut. In this first series of images, what happens is, if you're in a jury room, is they go through the first few slides and they'll make a note about the project to keep it or to pass on it. And once you get through the first round, they'll come back and it'll involve more study. And that's where the text probably helps, starts to pay off. But for me, I'm so enraptured by photography and the architecture. I try to really to limit that in our presentations. So one of the key things to think about is every image should earn its place. Like if it's like Jeff was saying, the technical drawing, you really need to put the effort into that and make sure that that's there for a reason. And you're showing something that's innovative and really raises the bar. It's not a typical detail. It's really serving the overall thesis of the project. So like I said, I have a preference for one photo per slide, but maybe that's personal preference. Can you go back real quick, Josh? One of the questions that we were asked to talk about was, the ratio of drawings to photographs. And I think that really depends on the project. There are projects like Max's project, I think that, is really not necessary. But it just depends what it is your narrative is about, what the project is about, and what that balance looks like. And like I said, this first combination of slides is sort of the hook. But generally, what we try to do is you lead with the strongest image, or like Jeff said, the most intriguing, enticing image. And then you end with one that's memorable too. And the reason for that is when you're in the jury room, a lot of times you'll go through a presentation, especially if it's under discussion. They'll hang out on the last slide. So your project will be sitting up on the screen or Zoom, and they're looking at that image. So I'd make sure that there's a lot of thought that's put into that last image as well. And then my partner and I argue about this all the time. He really likes this sort of walk through the project. I think the more important aspect of sequencing is that it just adds interest, visual interest. Like Jeff talked about changing the format of your slides as you move through. That really adds interest as you move through, that it's not monotonous. So that's important. And then the other key thing is jury doesn't know what it's missing. So if we'll often get hung up on a part of our project that we know is difficult, that we're really intrigued with, but that's why it helps to have other people look at it. The jury really doesn't, if they're not going to miss that, if it's gone and they don't know it's there, it's not adding something to the project. I would tend to take it out, edit. Okay. So this is one of my early projects, and the narrative is really about a group of young people wanted to have a retail boutique, and all they had was this square logo. And you can just go through this quickly, Josh. But really, the design is about echoing sort of the square. They had access to cheap hangers. We did this hanger screen for them. It's a budget-driven project, but really trying to establish them as a brand. But the first three slides, one of the things that we do a lot of times is we'll push the plans, the technical drawings further down in the presentation. And the first few slides, again, it's just to sort of get that hook, that the juror's interested. It makes it through the first cut, and then when they come back, there's more content there, to go through and look at. Which really trying to make it past the first cut. So some things to avoid: repetitive images. I'm super guilty of this. There'll be one aspect of the project you think is like just super cool, and there's beautiful photographs of it from 5 different directions. But as a juror, you're beating them over the head with it. It gets monotonous. Really got to edit that to get you want to show it off in a beautiful way, but just not overdo it. Dense text. Again, if you're going to use it and it's important to explain your project, I would really be just sensitive to filling the whole presentation with text, and that requires them to read it, because lots of times they won't. Make sure it stands on its own. Superlative statements. There's a lot of presentations been in jury rooms where the submission's telling us how great the project is, and how it's doing all these fantastic things for the community. I just be careful about that. From a juror side, those things feel like you're telling us as a jury what to think. I'd be much more, expository about it. Just, this is what it is. This is how it works, and let the jury decide. Construction drawings that aren't edited, you really need to, like Jeff was showing us, technical drawings. You really need to amend those drawings to be received more clearly, without all the notes, without all the references, just to show the architecture. Weak photography, unreadable diagrams, and multiple texts with themselves. But really, bottom line is respect the jury. These are architects. They're volunteering their time to look at it. You, as architects, are communicating as purely as you can with them what it is you've designed and why you think it's meritorious. So I would try and reveal, don't instruct them on what to do. So this is one of our submissions for Small Project Awards that was awarded. I can flip through this pretty quickly too, but you can see how the first image doesn't really tell you much about the project. It's key to the story, which is how the front part of this project interacts with the community. But it just sort of tries to pull you into the project. Because they only allow 10 slides for small projects, you can see we did combine multiple photographs onto a slide. At Texas Society of Architects, they allow, I think, 17 slides. And so there's a longer version of this presentation, which actually had more construction diagrams in it, which we edited out for the small project awards to try and get this as succinct as possible. So some lessons from the jury room, just to wrap up. Clarity beats complexity. Generally, you make your argument as clear as possible. That's why it helps to write the narrative first. Your images are saying the same thing as that narrative. That's going to come through a lot louder than trying to over-explain project or to dive into something that's more complicated, because there just is not enough time usually for the jury to absorb all of that information. The larger the field, the more imperative it is that you make an impact immediately, as quickly as possible, early in the presentation, to get your project moved to the next phase. How the jurors review projects, it varies by program. So some are more narrative heavy, some are more slideshow heavy, in the sense that the narrative is more easily ignored. I think both are super important. As a juror, I tend to, the narrative makes a huge impact on me. I think if you could tell that story, and then as you view the slideshow, it's reiterating all of those points again. I think that's going to put you, I think, in the best position that you can be in. Again, Jeff and I both said this. You want to make the first cut, but you got to pay off with repeated viewing of your submission. Again, make it easy for the jurors. You don't have a lot of time. So what happens is, after the first cut, the first two cuts, what happens is the jury starts to look for reasons to eliminate projects. So we're down to 20 projects. We're going to award 12 to 15. And you start going back through the projects, not looking for positive things anymore, but looking for things that might eliminate it. And that's when it goes back to those things to avoid. At the conference, there was somebody asking me about one of their projects that was submitted to Small Projects Awards. And the reason that their project was ultimately eliminated was not that it wasn't meritorious, it was very good. But one of the criticisms was there was a focus on part of the project, which there were some murals and some integration of some visual things in the architecture, that throughout the presentation, there seemed like there was such a focus on that I think it took away from other aspects of the project, that really showed a more balanced approach to the architecture overall. So I think you really need to be careful about some of those things. And again, edit and make sure your diagrams, your photographs are balanced, and to really capturing the full weight of the power of the project. And then, finally, that project submission I just showed you, we submitted it twice. It didn't win the first time. It got an award the second time. There's a whole variety of reasons why projects don't win awards. I think if you take the same jury and a different time of day, there might be different projects that rise to the top. And especially if you switch out one juror in the room, that would probably always make a difference in the slate of project that's won awards. So I decide that you think this project could be meritorious, and that there's something about it you really think is valuable, you should decide you're going to submit the project and submit it for the years that it's available, to have the best chance you can of success in that venue. So, and then just to end it with the, I think trying to fully explain the project is not as important as having the strongest conviction about it, presenting an idea with clarity. And I think with limited time, up in our small firm, I think that's what rises to the top, is how can we make this clear with the time that we have, to spend the time on the exhibits that we can to make this as clear as possible. And then that's the best we can do.
Oh, I guess we're having some diagnostic issues on the Mentimeter. Well, we'll just go on to, hopefully you all completed that. That was about how you integrate Framework for Design Excellence into your projects. So we will just go on to Lisa. Lisa, take it away.
Great. Next slide, Josh. I'm going to run through pretty quickly. I know we want to leave some times for questions. I think they're getting answered as we go. So I'm glad we got the results of the Mentimeter in the beginning, because we got a lot of people that are regular submitters and new ones, and a range of local to state to national. So I'm going to give a little bit of background on the AIA framework for design excellence. You can go to the next slide. So the framework for design excellence is built around 10 framework principles. These are the categories. I'm not going to read them. They're not unsimilar to categories you might see in the lead rating system, the Green Construction Code, right? We're talking about site and planet and well-being and people and energy and resources. So the framework is really supposed to be a toolkit for all architects, for clients, for all of our projects, regardless of size, location, typology, and whether you have a sustainability goal or not. When you go, I'm going to talk a little bit about the toolkit. When you go to the toolkit and you click on some of these, all of these start with a short description that says, good design reduces energy use. Good design supports health and well-being. Good design conserves, improves water quality. I think it was Jeff or Bart, one of the takeaways was, what are you doing beyond your project, right? We have to meet energy codes. We got to meet the, how are you actually responding to good design in your project and in our communities? Next slide. By incorporating the framework into your design process, we are actually helping the profession strive towards these outcomes that we want for the built environment. We want to live in a world, right, that's equitable, that's resilient, zero carbon, and healthy. Next slide. So the 10 framework principles actually came from COTE, the Committee on the Environment. Back in 1997, they had something called the Earth Day Top 10 that dwarfed went into the top 10 measures in 2005, similar to the 10 measure framework principles we have today. And it was in 2019 when AIA National announced this big move. I was on the architecture side at that moment, and I was super excited about this news. At that conference that June, they passed this urgent and sustained climate action resolution. And then later on that fall, that's when the framework for design excellence was officially named and adopted by AIA National, and the 10 COTE measures became the 10 framework principles. Next slide. So when you go to our website, and Christina will share all these slides at the end, there's just lots of information. There's a 2-minute overview video on YouTube you can watch. What is the framework for design excellence? There's an AIAU course, get a CEU credit for it. There's an infographic you can download that has that short description and some of the questions. Next slide. When you go to our website for each of the framework principles, this is how it's kind of set up. You'll get that brief description. You'll see this on the right. Framing questions, if you can do one or a few things. This is the high level stuff. If you want to do a little bit of a deeper dive, the rest of the information is organized into focused topic areas. So if you're interested in nature-based solutions, you can click on the little accordion. It will open up some best practices and some resource links. Next slide. And then the last part of the toolkit is the case studies. This, we used to have 4 COTE Top 10 as our case studies, and in the last year and a half, I worked with a framework task group where we went through and we wanted to keep one COTE Top 10 winner, but we also wanted to have project examples from all of the other AIA National Award winners. So this example, you can see one small project, one healthcare, one housing, and one COTE. Next slide. You can go to the next one, Josh. This, I don't expect you to read everything on the slide. This is just here to show you that in this exercise, you can see small projects is in the lilac, housing is in the green. You can see we really wanted to integrate all different project types, different project sizes into all the framework principle case studies. Next slide. I mentioned removing some of the COTE Top 10 case studies, and I'm going to actually give you a few right now. But if you haven't heard of the Top 10 award, it's really the industry's best known program for sustainable design, exemplary performance with design integrated together. Next slide. let's see. So on the right-hand side, if you went to our conference this year, the 2026 award winners were just announced. I'm going to walk you through. You can get to all of the submission PDFs of the COAT Top 10 award winners, which I think is really inspirational. Our AIA Award Gallery has only been up for a few years, so I'm also tracking. Sorry, I think that was my incoming call. Sorry about that. We're tracking additional COAT information from historical information from the last few years, and there's an article about the legacy of COAT in the top 10. Next slide. So when you're on our website, you'll see all 10 of the project examples. You can click on one. It will take you to the award gallery where you'll see all the important project information. You have to scroll all the way to the bottom. You'll see a button that says Submission Portfolio, and it will then open up the PDF. Next slide. These next couple ones I'm going to run through again pretty quickly. I just want to stay on integration for a minute because Jeff and Bart both talked about treating a submission as a design process. And one of the most important things about the Framework for Design Excellence and incorporating sustainability into your project is about an integrated design process. What are you doing throughout the project? How do different things react together? So Jeff's example was he's using one slide, he's showing a section, he's got the plan, and he's like doing 5 things with that one slide. Similarly, in your design process, can you use your roof for 5 things? You're going to collect energy, you're collecting rainwater, you're doing this, and it also does that. Then those things can't be VA'd out. It's an integrated design element in your project that is doing 5 things. That's what that integration framework principle is really about. How do all of the other principles interact with each other? Next slide. Equitable communities, next. Ecosystems, I want to stay on this one just for a minute. This one is in San Antonio, and this was probably one of the first COAT Top 10 projects that really wasn't an enclosed building. It really had, I don't know, it didn't maybe listed no occupants at all, but it went through and really excelled in this ecosystem. So not every project is going to be an exemplar in all 10 principles. The COAT Top 10, we really do want them to express exemplary performance in all 10 principles. But even COAT Top 10 winners are going to have a story. Confluence Park's story was about ecosystems and nature and people coming to the space and the community. They didn't do very good in the energy category because they didn't actually have any systems to have energy systems for. And that's okay. It was still a COAT Top 10 award winner and a really good one. Next slide. Watershed is an example where not only are they meeting their plumbing code, not only are they conserving water, they are collecting runoff from the bridge. They are treating it. They're cleaning it to go into Lake Union. They're probably saving salmon in the process. I'm not sure. They're doing lots of things. This is the thing about going beyond. So you have sustainable strategies. You can have some COAT Top 10. And then what we're talking regenerative design. How can you go beyond your building and actually give back to the community? So a lot of the COAT Top 10 examples, this one is a regenerative example of water. The park example was a regenerative example of ecosystems. Next slide. Energy. Energy is not about only expensive facade systems and the PV panels. The most important thing in the design for energy principle is energy conservation. How can you use integrated principles to actually reduce energy use? Next slide. Economy, we can go through the rest of these. Well-being is something everyone can connect to, from schools to senior living to healthcare to home. This is one principle that I think every architect will be able to craft some story around. Next slide. Resources, I know we're running out of time, so I want to get to the end of this section. Change and discovery. Next slide. The next 2 slides, I think, Jeff, I think you had some of these as well, whether they're sections, they're axons, they're plans. It's some way to talk about your project in a way that you're talking about that integrated performance of sustainability strategies. The one thing that I noticed with top 10 projects, doesn't just say PV panels. It says PV panels that generate this much amount of the energy. It doesn't say low emitting materials. It says low emitting materials where 67% have EPD reporting. So it's actually connecting what was your intention to what was actually built with the statistics to back that up. Next slide. This one, it doesn't matter that this was a big project, an education building, whoever the client was. The reason I just wanted to pull this one out as an example, this is one of the award winners from this year, is because their story, it was a health sciences education building, their story was a culture of care. And they had 3 main points: fostering the future, extending impact, sustaining care, whatever the 3 points are. Underneath that is how they organized their connection to the framework principles. So next slide. As you can see, this was fostering the future. Then they had 3 separate slides. And Bart might think this is too much information on a slide. And Jeff's like, well, maybe have one of those because you also have a bleed. And again, it's up to you. You're telling the story. But in this example, they have some images of the space. They have a plan. They have the initial sketch of what it was supposed to be. And it tells the story. It connects it to the framework. And it connects it to the story of the project. Next slide. This is my last slide. This is just a quick announcement. Check out the 2026 award winners, get some inspiration. There's links there to the top 10 winners. 2027 National Awards open August 28th. If you have any questions, there's some emails there.
Great, thank you. Thank you all. So here are the award submission dates for the states, for New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York State. And those will also be in the chat. Tri-States is September 11th, and National opens up on August 28th and closes on November 3rd. And so now we're going to jump in and try to get a couple of questions before we wrap up. Seth.
So there were a couple questions posed in the chat already, and I see that Jeff already jumped in and answered some of them. But I'm going to repeat some, but I'm going to start off with another question that came up in terms of in Jeff, you had a lot of images of people in them. Did you have to do special waivers for all the people? And I know you mentioned that you like to put people in them to activate the pictures, but was that a problem?
It's case by case, especially with children and minors. Most private schools, the example I showed was a private school. Every year they get all students, they get their parents to sign a waiver giving permission to be involved in photography and marketing assets for the school. Some choose not to sign that, and the school helped us identify which students we wouldn't be able to include in photographs. Like that lunchtime photograph, we made sure that those students turned their back to us. In public schools, we'll give forms. We'll work with either the principal or whoever our contact at the school is to identify kids who they think would be into this and want to do it, and we make sure that they get their parents to sign forms allowing them to participate. They might get excused from class and get to spend some, half hour with us, and they usually like that. And so we kind of do what it takes to get people involved, and the rules differ from place to place.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to try and read this. This one's a little long-winded. Given that small and solo firms represent roughly 75% of all AIA firm memberships, the current awards process feels structurally stacked against us. Meeting the deep narrative and data requirements of the Framework for Design Excellence requires dozens of hours of preparation, which sole practitioners must do entirely on weekends, evenings, without the day-to-day time, staff, or marketing resources of larger firms. What is the AIA doing to streamline the submission criteria or change the judging process so that excellent design from solo practices is evaluated equitably rather than being excluded by lack of institutional resources? Lisa, maybe?
Yeah, that was one for me. We do at AIA, we do have it is true, 70, I don't know if it's 70, a large percentage of the firm membership is from small firms. And when you look at it from members, the majority of members actually work for large firms. So we do have to balance that out in everything that we do. And there is we want the framework to be an accessible tool for every architect in their everyday practice. And lots of times, like I said, that means you don't have to document everything for every principle. I know a lot of the components, and I'm not sure if it's AIA New Jersey or New York, someone correct me. You pick three principles that you are doing well, and you talk about those. I know last year we added a question that in the beginning of the AIA National submission application that actually said, which one of the framework principles do you think you're actually doing the best? Or I don't know, I can't remember exactly how it was worded. The reason we did that is because that was a way to identify projects for future case studies that we could look at that aren't COAT winners. And we're also looking at tools of what can AIA National do that can help local components. So if you've submitted to the COAT Top 10 in the past, there was an Excel spreadsheet. We called it the super spreadsheet. And last year we brought that into the DDX. This year as a pilot, AIA Chicago had a decarbonization award, and they used the COAT Top 10 in the DDX as part of their submission process. Could that be a way to make it easier for architects to use tools like that in their design process and then make it easier to connect to the end? But Lee, I copied and pasted your question. I will also submit it to the Honors and Awards team. We also have an Honors and Awards task force. There's lots of surveys and things going on, so we definitely will take that feedback.
Okay, thank you. So some other questions that I see Jeff did answer, but I want to kind of open it up to everyone. Any advice on how to show existing conditions versus new before and after shots? Bart, do you have any thoughts? Do you ever do, we'll call it before and after?
Sure. I mean, it depends on the project, but I think it's pretty key if you're doing a renovation project to show at least a plan and some photos. I did a Boys and Girls Club project that won a Small Firms Award, and that was key to that submission because the transformation was, the whole soul of the project, and the constraints involved and those kinds of projects that's the best way to communicate it. So definitely, you should definitely do that. On the last question, I'll offer just some practical advice. I think some of the sentiment I think is valid, to be honest with you. But as a practical notion, if you have a project you think is worthy of submission, don't let any of those things hold you back from submitting. I mean, Framework for Design Excellence is a platform for responsible architecture. And you have a design that you feel like has a strong case and a strong narrative, present that narrative, and parts of the framework will apply, right? And find those parts and explain them well. And if you don't have the data, then make the best case you can within the form, the national form, and submit the project. I wouldn't let those things hold you back.
Okay, let me just look here. Another question, looking at it from a juror perspective, someone asked the question are you usually looking as a juror on a laptop screen or a desktop screen or a TV to review the submissions, or a phone?
I shared my experience. I'd be curious to hear Bart's.
Well, I think it depends on the program. So our local Tech Side of Architects is all done in a room physically. with people looking at a large screen. When I'm doing something remote, I'm looking at it on my pretty large monitor, this far away from my face. So you're seeing a lot of detail there. But I think in general, if you're looking at text size, if you're looking at legibility, I would default to the smallest screen and probably look at it on a laptop, because inevitably someone will be looking at it on their laptop, and make sure it works at that scale. If it works at that scale, it'll work at a larger scale.
So there's a question here. How do you tackle, and again, there was an answer, but maybe some additional comment. How do you tackle a submission where there are slides, but also a text form component, such as AIA National, that uses the Common App, which is your slides plus essentially a spreadsheet with text length requirements? I can't relate that because I don't internationally, so I don't know what that means. Maybe someone could weigh in.
Yeah, and I mean, I chimed in on this one. To us, it means that we don't need to say a lot of the things on the slides that I included in the presentation I shared today, which has a version of that form, but a much pared down one. So on a national submission or on a submission where there's a document that allows you to write out the narrative and paragraph form and with the data, that relieves the visual slides from having to do that. So the amount of text on those slides, for us, it's much less text, more kind of high level. Might be like, as Lisa was suggesting, some of the high level like outcomes, like X% of resources, less carbon used because we use the existing building or something like that. Just like real highlights, big, easy to remember, tied to a drawing or an image. But if that's a huge advantage if there's a supplemental form, because it can bear the burden of all the text that might otherwise be required if you didn't have that.
Okay. Josh, do you have, I'm looking through, I don't see any other, hold on one second. There was a question or two about,
Emily
is it
Diggs,
Go
that was
ahead,
it.
Josh?
I was just going to say, I think there's one from Emily Diggs that was interesting. We're a small firm, and I, the marketing coordinator, usually put our submissions together with limited input from principals and project architects. Since these folks don't have a lot of time to work on these submissions, are there any good workflow hacks to make sure that I get the info I need to make a compelling proposal? So I'm curious what I mean, Jeff put his answer in there, but I'm curious what Bart might say in that regard.
I haven't seen Jeff's answer, but I agree with Jeff.
Like, I mean, this was my
I-
first this was my first job when I first got hired, my coming out of architecture school. I was working on a project, but it was in the summertime, and that's when a lot of these firms are working on award submissions. Many of them are due in the fall, and for us, a lot of the we use it as an opportunity for our summer interns to often help. It was my first full-time job in an architecture office. Well, after graduating, my first full-time job after graduation. And one of the things I was given was we need to submit these design awards. I didn't even know what a design award was. They showed me a couple of the previous year's submissions, and this was back in the day when it was like a hard binder, had to fit in the portfolio. And my suggestion, first of all, hopefully you're the principal in charge and the project architect, like this is really important to them, hopefully. And like if they're not invested in this, then I'm not sure how much success you're going to have. Hopefully you have their buy-in and success and you can use their time efficiently. I sat and interviewed, I prepared questions, I interviewed the partner in charge, I interviewed the project architect who spent years working on the project and loved the project and wanted to share everything he possibly knew about the project. Anytime I had any questions, I could go to him and he would show me what drawings they had. So he was a huge resource. He didn't have to do a lot of work, but he helped me find the things that I needed. I mocked up the presentation, learning from what I saw from previous years, and reviewed it with the partner in charge and over lunch. I reviewed it with the partner in charge and the PA together and got their input and refined it. And so I think I was able to use their time efficiently, but they were interested and they were engaged and they were part of the process. And I wouldn't have been able to do it without their input.
I think too, if you have any sort of, project kickoff, or even when you're going for the interview to try to win the job, you already have an idea of what the story might be. And as you get the job and then you go to the project kickoff and you start thinking about project goals, at that point, the framework can help inform the design process. Like you realize, like, okay, we can only do this with, we're not gonna, if you're like, what do you want to focus on? If you're doing a healthcare project, okay, well-being is our story. You're doing an engineering firm office, let's focus on efficiency and energy. And you kind of set the goals and help the framework. You can use that to help you tell the story from the beginning.
I would use it too. Jeff talked about design culture in your firm. I think there's integrating the design award submissions into your firm design culture really, I think, helps a lot. I had the same experience Jeff did when I worked at a larger firm. I put together the design award submissions. One of the things I learned from that was before I talked to principal in charge or the designer about the project, was looking at sort of the photographic evidence and the drawings of the project and thinking about what is the narrative of this project? What are the elements of design excellence that make this project rise above? And in some of them, that was difficult. And why is it difficult? What was the opportunity here? What could have what could the story have been? And I think firm-wide, especially in larger firms, like sharing that kind of information and building this sort of consensus about what's important about architecture as you approach new projects, I think has immense value.
That's a great point. And often the partner in charge or principal in charge or project director isn't in the best position to tell the story because they've got in all kinds of biases about what happened and didn't happen. And all you have are the assets, the photographs,
Right.
the drawings. And so that's all the jury is going to be able to see. So I think sometimes it requires some objectivity to take what we have, and we'll often reframe things, especially you know, we win a lot of awards, but we lose way more than we win. We submit a lot and we'll repeat submitting until the expiration is up if we believe in the project. Marlon Blackwell had a really good I try to get, to the best you can, you try to get feedback from jurors who were seeing the work because, I kind of want to know what worked and what didn't work. And he told us we had a project that we thought was a shoe-in, like still one of our best projects in our opinion, in our humble opinion. And we couldn't believe it. Like other projects that we submitted were recognized, this one wasn't. And Marlon said, "You're too in love with it." And we went back and looked, and he was 100% right. We stripped the whole thing back, simplified it, far fewer images of the same thing, which was one of Bart's points, and it won the top honor the next year after like a very hard editing.
That's another good point that I don't think any of us made, which is one of the things I'd recommend is if you can get, if it's not you, it's somebody in your firm to be members of design awards committees and to find their way into these jury rooms or call jurors and ask for feedback because there's something invaluable about being in that room and hearing unedited feedback where you realize that a lot of the things that people are trying to communicate are just misunderstood. And a lot of the messaging that they think is there is there's just a miss there. And the feedback that you get from jurors is also, again, sort of fed into design culture, is good feedback for how to approach the next project, because maybe there is a miss there. But being in the room there's not a good substitute for that knowledge base if you can get it.
Well, I want to thank our guests today, Jeff Goldstein, Bart Shaw, Lisa Ferretto. I really appreciate both Josh and I think all of AIA super benefited from you as panelists today, speaking about your work and speaking about how really to help future participants enter into competitions. I learned quite a bit. and I enter every year into the awards program. And actually similar, when I worked in college, I worked in a firm where we worked on the marketing. When I was in architecture school, I worked in their marketing department as one aspect. So I understand what you're talking about. Again, a big thank you to all of you. I believe, Christina, I don't know if you're there or not. I don't see you, but I
here.
I think you had said we're going to be able to have this available. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We'll send it out along with the resources and some updates to the questions.
Right. So that'll all be available to the participants today. Thank you again. And we look forward when it comes to AIA New Jersey as co-chair with Josh is on the Design Awards, and also both of us being involved in Tri-States, to seeing many of you participate and win, hopefully. Thanks again.
And in Princeton in the fall.
Thank you.
And well, yes, and Princeton.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.